Coming up next on Get Caught in a Net.
You are now tuned in to Mind, Body, and Soul with Annette, where your host, Annette Harris, analyze intriguing life questions and concerns, such as, do Christians suffer from mental illness? Have you wondered why they act abnormal? Or you may ask, what is really going on in their minds? Do you need Annette? Well, keep listening for a biblical understanding of the psychology of the mind.
Hey, great evening, guys. Welcome to another wonderful segment of Mind, Body, and Soul with Annette. I'm your girl, your host, Annette Harris. I am the CEO of Get Caught in a Net Incorporated, your certified mental health ambassador, and two-time award-winning author of that bestseller, Surviving a Silenced Heartbeat. Listen, it is another segment, Be Well Mental Health segment on this evening. And I'm so excited because I have the same panelists that we had last week. They are back on this evening. And I'm telling you, we didn't even get through a quarter of the stuff that we wanted to talk about last week. So, but that is no worries because we do have this week and the next 2 Wednesdays to come to you to talk about mental health. So I'm going to bring them in one by one, and I'm so excited. We have Dr. Carolyn Stevens with us on this evening. Author Black Diamond is here. Author Bobby Struchin, leadership coach Rachel Gary, and also Yolanda Niels. She is the founder and owner of the Kendrick Healing Center, and I am ecstatic to have them back on this evening. Listen, I want to tell you guys that when you come in, go ahead and click the share button, the thumbs up, the heart, if you would not mind. We are live on my Facebook page, Annette Get Caught in a Net, YouTube, Annette Get Caught in a Net, and also Instagram, Annette Get Caught in a Net. So when you guys, either if you listen to this for a few minutes, you can't listen to it in its entirety, you can always go back to my pages. My pages are public so that you can listen and engage with us on this evening. And we will also have our shows uploaded to Intellectual Radio's YouTube channel. And we'll probably do all that all at once these segments are over. So let me see here. I am we're going to jump right in on tonight because there's so much to talk about. And again, I'm grateful for Dr. Stevens even coordinating this, reaching out to me to coordinate this this panel, of discussion, because it is something, again, that we need to touch on and talk about. Now, last week, we got hung up on talking about the difference between mental illness, mental health, or not really hung up on it, but we were just trying to get some understanding behind it. And I thought that was a good place for us to start. Now, this week, I reached out to Dr. Stevens, and she had already submitted a few subtopics, if you will. And so I asked her if she wouldn't mind. We want to try and jump into some of the different ones that she suggested. So I'm going to actually throw the ball in her court if she would not mind kind of facilitating that part. We have, she talked about stigmas, culture norms, systemic issues regarding any barriers and challenges that we face in our community. So Dr. Stevens, I know you had given me some questions, but I want to kind of throw it to you first to see if you want to, kind of jump into those questions, or navigate somewhere else. Are you able to hear me?
No. Well, first I want to say good evening to the panelists. Yes, we can hear you. I can hear you.
Okay.
Okay, make sure you can hear me.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
I want to say good evening to all of these awesome panelists. I am so honored to be here tonight with you, Annette, and with all of the panelists with us live. We want to say good evening to you on tonight, and I'm looking forward to this discussion. And so wherever you would like to start with any of the questions that you have, we can just start right there.
Okay. That's fine. We all, let's see, we're not new to this particular conversation, but I know that we have many of us have come across some different myths and misconceptions about mental health, okay, within our Black community. And one of the questions that Dr. Stevens had presented, I kind of want to maybe talk about that. Um, how does those myths or misconceptions themselves prevent us from seeking help in the, we're talking about the Black community. So we kind of want to look at that and seeing, because I think it's important to touch on and dissect, because we even said it last week. We want to address these things, but we want to see how we can get the help, right? So why do you think any myths or misconceptions, or what are they? Let's first start off with what they are. Some of the misconceptions or biggest myths, about mental health in the Black community. Maybe someone can start off with that first, that you know of, and maybe have encountered in your work.
Okay, but that's a really good question. I'd love to hear what one of our panelists has to say on that one, in terms of what are some of the misconceptions that in our lines of work and practices. What have we heard? That's really.
I'd like to offer this, just because I was just dealing with this today. I am seeing an increase of Black women between the ages of about 45 to 55 who are caught up in this federal government net, right? Where they're losing their jobs. So today I had 3 women come in, PhD level, Spelman graduates, who all have lost their jobs. And the misconception is that something's wrong with you if you go seek help for the anxiety or the stress, even the depression that is sitting in, as the world is being what I call reconstructed. Being destroyed first. There's some destruction happening, and people are getting caught up in the midst of the wrecking ball. But there is light on the other side of the tunnel, in my opinion. But in the midst of it, just to be able to say how you feel in a way, in a setting that can get you help. There's still that strong, I'm okay, I'm good, I don't need a therapist, thank you, kind of thing going on. That's what I'm seeing.
Wow. You said a whole lot.
If I could just chime in a little bit on that, it's ironic that we're talking about this right now. Me and Dr. Stevens, we talked about this probably I want to say it's probably been 6 months ago, Dr. Stevens, where I was where we were discussing about how the world is going to change and how a lot of us are not preparing for that change. I'm a big proponent on that. I don't work on things that I cannot change. I work on the things that I can. Mm-hmm. And when the president, the new president when he was voted in, everybody was so worried about what was going to happen, and as opposed to preparing. Right. And The only reason that why I wanted to say to speak on that is that I think a lot of times that a lot of the anxiety started with knowing that he was voted in and that he was going to make some radical changes, but instead of preparing ourselves for the worst and hoping for the best, but preparing for the worst, we're allowing those things to now they're happening as a lot of us already knew they were going to happen, and we didn't prepare ourselves for what if and what will we do next. And I think that is something that a lot of people are struggling with, because the only thing we know is what we know currently, and currently we know that, just as you stated, that the world is going to make a drastic change.
Yeah,
it's not going to be a subtle change; it's going to be dramatic. Right. And with the dramatic change, what will we do? What will we do? And I think that that's where we first need to start. Is what if this happens? I know you guys know the if and then theories, the if and then. So if this happens, what do I do next? Right. And prepare for what you're going to do next. And if it doesn't happen, great. So it was just ironic that we were talking about this, because it originally started that it's been 100,000 women who have lost their jobs in the last year. And this is not statistics. I'm not coming with false data. I'm coming from with actual information that I have actually researched. That there's 100,000 women who have lost their jobs in the government sector, and most of those women are Black.
Right.
So with that being said, then a lot of people, we need to prepare that more will come. So what are we going to do next?
And is this a great opportunity to lean into God with the greatest faith and trust that there's some gifts that we have that we can either uncover or discover during these times?
Absolutely. And that's what I coach on. My whole coaching program is on identifying your gifts for profit. That is what my whole coaching program is about, because we leaned into our gifts to utilize them within companies or organizations or positions. It's now time to lean into those gifts, rearrange those gifts, and lean them into a gift that profits you, and also opens up channels for other people to have employment in a different facet. Utilizing those talents are going to propel us towards our best version of our lives.
Yes.
You know, in our community, mental health has always carried this unspoken weight. Growing up, we didn't talk about therapy. We talked about prayer. We talked about strength. We talked about surviving. But somewhere along the line, we equated getting help with being weak. And that's the lie many of us are still trying to unlearn.
Yeah.
I often tell people all the time, faith and therapy are not enemies. You can pray and go to therapy. God gave us both prayer and professionals for a reason.
I would agree. You know, Arthur Black, she just lays stuff down. She just matter of fact, but I totally agree with that. and I think, you know, somewhere along the line, the lines became blurred, and you know, if you say something about a therapist or a counselor, you know, they'll immediately, you know, shun it away. I was listening to someone even over the weekend, and I'm glad you say that they're not a threat to each other. You know, that I believe that God places, you know, individuals in certain positions, be it mental health or whatever, for a reason. And I talked about this last week. If you hurt yourself, you're immediately going to call that medical doctor. So why not, you know, reach out to the mental health professionals, and they can assist, you know, even in that spiritual aspect. Now, I do advocate Christian counseling. I do. That's just me. But we shouldn't look at it as a threat to our spiritual lives, our spiritual self. There should be no reason to even think it's a threat. Yolanda, you said something earlier when you started off talking, you know, about the pressure that those women or individuals that you were, coming in contact with were under. So then and it's all over, that pressure, right? So as Coach Gary said, how do we get the help? What do we do? I'm grateful for her and her coaching program, that she has, so it's okay, to get that help from that therapist or that counselor. It's not it shouldn't be a shun. It really should not.
I believe that in the last few years, actually, but definitely last year and this year, we're in a shift or be shifted space, so that we can be aligned divinely with what we're here for.
Yeah.
But we've been so corporately entangled and educated to be that way that now when the weight is on us to work with the inner director, our inner highest and greatest self, to really sit and chat with God from a space within ourselves, it's challenging because it's different, right? It's different. What the other thing that I see in my center is that we've inherited so much tension that it's hard to be still and to be quiet and to be plugged in so we could hear, right? The divine self. And so when it happens, when things move around outside of us, we don't necessarily go to sit still and be quiet and listen. We just kind of, we're used to masking. So we just, put on a mask and say, I'm okay, I'm all right. I'm telling you, I had a sister who just got let go from her job, who just finished writing her second or third book. So the pressure of all that. And she has a 14-month-old that she's nursing. And when I said, it's going to be okay, she just broke down crying. And I just, I immediately thought, how many other women are walking around here holding so much stuff in, women and men? Because I had, brothers. I had a brother there last week break down crying. We're holding a lot of stuff that we could get some assistance with releasing, so that we can be closer to hearing and receiving what we need to connect with or align with in terms of our next steps. The world is not over for us. It's just changed. It looks different.
Yeah. And if I could chime in on that, I appreciate what you just said. Because it's ironic. I just left my show having the same very similar discussion, and the biggest thing is that when we were speaking about the mask, I think that we've lived under the mask so long that we don't know what we really look like. We don't really understand who we are and how connected. I mean, I am not religious, but I'm spiritual, and I believe that each of us are part of God, and God is within us, and we're all interconnected to that. And to be still with yourself is something that is just really unheard of right now. There's so much noise around us on an everyday basis. To have the opportunity to be still. I was just speaking that I'm still at least twice a day. I meditate in the mornings and I meditate in the afternoons to make sure my discernment with what I'm doing in my path is still set. So even though something might upset me during the day, but it took me a whole year to get to that point. When all of this, before these things even started happening, when I'm not, this is not a political statement I'm making, guys. When Donald Trump was even saying that he was going to run, I already started working on a plan on what ifs. I'm going to give just a little bit of my plan just because I want to explain to my why. I already had a plan, which I met with my family members and said, what are we going to do if ABC happens? And we already started looking for places outside of the U.S. to start building our family life. Right now, we're building homes in the Dominican Republic. That's what we're building homes right now. We have already got sanctions from the government. We started that a year ago. We had already started, but it goes to, instead of being a victim, we were empowered.
Yeah.
And yes, we need the support of getting the help, but we also need the support of what we're going to do once we get the help, because the ball is still going to roll. No matter whether we get the help or not, the ball is still going to roll. And if the ball is still rolling, the reason why a lot of people are, I mean, this is not saying that I believe in mental health being a problem. I believe in when we don't get the help, that we are in even worse situations. But if we don't get the help and get some discernment on what we're going to do next, we'll be in that same cycle of figuring out, getting in tune with God, still trying to figure it out, and just praying. And we have to have prayer, help, and action plan, so we can all grow those things together.
I definitely agree with that. I want to say that all of these comments are just so deeply profound, and I agree with you, Yolanda, because 90% of my clientele are African American women, and so unfortunately, for the fortunate, I'm going to say, for the fortunate thing to come, many of my colleagues that work on jobs that have been laid off, or they've been fired from jobs, let go, what have you. But two things I want to say is, well, three things. One, the fact that we have such a great percentage of African American women being released from their employment should come to no surprise to us. It should not come to any surprise to us, because when we look at the statistics, it is the African American woman, for the most part, that is the head of household in terms of bringing in the finances, because we have lots of single moms who are raising children. And so if the powers that be, we will say, wanted to attack the Black family, of course, then the Black woman would be number one target. The second thing is, in terms of how we look at therapy through these times that we are in, I won't limit it to just therapy, because that could be a therapeutic coach, that could be a trauma-informed specialist, it could be a holistic therapist, but what I would say is that while you're navigating through these waters, through these turbulent waters, it would be most advantageous to have someone in your life that could act as sort of a guide, to help guide you through what it is that you're going through, if no more than to be that active listener that can listen. Of course, with the professional, they're going to be able to offer some coping skills and strategies to help you. I would also say that in my own personal life, I feel no despair, and neither should we. But I understand that if you have a job that you've been depending on a number of years, and to suddenly not have that income, certainly that is a shock to the system. But crisis is just another word for opportunity. What I'm going to say is, come on, Black folks. I mean, this is not our.
It's our time. It's our time.
Our first time seeing crises. You understand?
Yeah.
I mean, we've invented that word. We know what to do. What we are now, and for all the people, I don't really even talk about that gentleman, but I will say, for the sake of this discussion, Donald Trump is no threat, because I believe that in some way or form or fashion that he is being used by God to help us get where we need to go.
That's right.
That is all it's for. He's being used by God to help us get back to what? To get back to us. To get back to who we have.
Get back to the roots.
Always been. Okay. you know, I even think about when they're talking about the things that they're doing to food now, and for some people, food stamps are being cut off, and certain things. Okay, well, look, that's only going to help us because we need to get back to a better diet, that which may be a plant-based diet. We need to just get back to us. So I look at these trying times, just taking us back to our roots, taking us back to who we are, taking us back to community pulling together. Because hey, there was no food stamps many years ago. We had each other. Okay, that's what we had. We had each other, and by all means, all of this is certainly taking us back to God, to where we need to be. Okay, and bringing us from the place where we're not dependent upon the government. So the government has shut down. That means that we just need to stand up. That's right. Really all it means. But of course, to hear that coming out of my mouth, right? Someone may say, okay, well, Dr. Carolyn, that's easy for you to say because you had not been fired, you hadn't lost your job, you hadn't lost your profession or what have you. But I say that is why we do need someone, whether that's someone like me or someone like any of us, because we're all mental health professionals in our own right? So you do need someone to walk alongside of you, whether that's a professional therapist or what have you, to just encourage you, guide you, or connect with you while you're going through this level of anxiety or going through what you're going through, to say, hey, it's just now time to shift. Okay, no, girl, you don't have that job, but it's time now to shift. It's time to go inside of yourself and find out, okay, what are these gifts that you have? What can you do now to not be connected to the 9 to 5 matrix? What do you feel your next step in God may be?
Right.
I'm listening to what everybody is saying, and I'm seeing that there are systematic issues. We can't talk about mental health without naming the systems that have failed us. For generations, African Americans have been mistreated. We've been misunderstood. We've been misdiagnosed in healthcare. That trauma didn't just disappear. It created a wall. It was a wall of mistrust that remains in place today. Because if you look this way, it's mistrust. You look this way, it's mistrust. So when people say Black people don't go to therapy, I say it's not that we don't want to heal, it's that we've been misconditioned. We have been conditioned to protect ourselves from systems that weren't built for us. Right. And that's real. But now it's on us to start reclaiming our healing, our terms, and our spaces with the people who see us.
That's good. That's good.
I love that statement.
Yeah, that's good.
Bobby, did you want to jump in?
Yeah, I wanted to jump in and say that even in the African American community, the Black culture, we also are impacted by self-inflicted wounds as well. So I wanted to bring that to light for some of our listeners who are easily able to see the impact of the government shutdown and the impact of the financial world. Even some are aware of the political climate. But closer to home, there's a lot of self-inflicted trauma and anxiety within the family. And so the women are clearly visible, and the men are also clearly visible even in their absence. There are a lot of wounded men who have to stand on the side because, the woman is easily seen as the one that's bearing the strength of the family and the decision making, and yes, on many times the welfare of the home, how things are going to work on the day-to-day grind. But the help I would love to expose is that while we mention God, in his respectful place, so to say that, God is this spiritual inner being who helps guides us and stuff like that. That's surface. But once you come into a knowledge, as Dr. Carolyn highlighted and many others, once you can meet someone who can tell you that this thing right here, God is not ignorant. God is not some spiritual entity that we check in with, depending on who knows him. And so I'm speaking boldly from my position as a self-investment strategist. There isn't anyone who is not suffering a trauma, even with the loss of the jobs, the change in the political climate. Your home is under attack. And so when you're trying to go to sleep at night, it's you that's dealing with all of these external traumas, but also the self-inflicted one, where you can come to get help. Listen to me, come to get to that person you can talk to, but also understand that God is not an ignorant God, not the one I'm speaking about. He is strategic. Those of you who are familiar with scripture know that God told a man named Noah to build an ark. He told Noah how to build an ark. Now, that was during a crisis time too, because there was an onslaught of a 40-night and 40-day flood coming. Noah, who never built anything like an ark, heard from a strategic God. There are counselors, therapists, there are people in the faith-based world. I highly recommend, even in this platform, Rachel Gary, only for this reason. Listen to me. Coach Gary knows how to bring in and help you tap in to the gifts God gave you. She doesn't distribute gifts. She has not given anybody a gift. It came from God. So God empowers us because he's intelligent to take you from being anxious to being peaceful, and he uses people. I don't want you to be afraid, listener, tonight. I don't want you to be afraid that it is a therapist or mental illness, or if I admit that I got a trauma in this area, that means my whole life is screwed up. No, that's not what that means. I want you to understand, if you got anxiety about your job, it does not mean that you got a mental health illness about your daughter or about how you dress or how you look. But sometimes that stigmatism is, if I have a mental health issue or trauma going on in one area, that means my whole life is messed up. No, you're not.
Mm-hmm.
No, you're not. You're dealing with the direct issue, and that issue does not define you. You've got a lot of help on the line tonight. I'm so glad you're here. I want you to understand that you are heard and you're not by yourself. And when we bring in the name of God, it doesn't mean God do this and then somebody else does that. God is the one who gives us all those abilities so that you don't have to be fearful. I want you to know you're not what happened to you. I want you to shake that off tonight. You are not the loss of your job. That's not who you are. God has a strategic plan for you. That's why you're listening right now, because we have the help on this line. Each of the ones you see on the panelists have something to contribute to your life, not just in the spiritual realm, but in this earth realm. Be encouraged. I want you to be encouraged. You're here for purpose and you're getting help. You're getting help now. You can go ahead and say that out your own mouth. I'm getting help now. I'm getting help right here, right now.
That's good. That's good stuff. Bobby comes in with that motherly. She just, I love it. I love it. I love it. That's beautiful. And because this is what we want to get across with that question, to eliminate the myths and the misconceptions, and so that people can understand they can get help. And they're not alone. They're not alone. And they do have a voice. So many people, their voices have been taken away for whatever reason, whether it was self-inflicted or whatever, or situations they were going through. But you said that very beautifully. So thank you for that. So, I mean, I guess we can kind of move forward talking about cultural norms and traditions, some traditions in the Black community um, that influences attitudes toward discussing and addressing those mental health issues. Um, Dr. Carolyn, before we go there, Dr. Carolyn, I did want to ask you a question though, before we move to that. In your practice, what have you yourself observed? And I'm glad Yolanda started off with what she observed even on today, some situations that she was dealing with. But in your practice, what have you like come up against or experienced as far as the church is concerned with people getting help? Did you have, and I of course I know you're not going to disclose because you cannot, who you talk with or what they've dealt with, but I mean just on a whole, have you seen a push from the church saying no, we don't need to go that route of the therapist, counselor, and if you have seen that, have you seen a change in it, or what has been your experience with that?
Well, as it relates to the faith-based community, I can say that there seems to be an increase of embracing mental health practices. More faith-based leaders are embracing the idea of their parishioners engaging in therapy, counseling. I would say not enough, but certainly there are more than there were in the past, which is a good thing. It's certainly something that I advocate for. Prior to seeing more faith-based leaders embrace mental health, because as a practitioner, I oftentimes tell people this is my ministry. It might not be behind a pulpit, but this is also my ministry. It is how I serve. It is one of the ways that I serve. So it too is a ministry, and I'm very big on education because a lot of people talk about mental health, but sometimes they lack the education. And just using, I think in last week's episode, we talked about some terminology. Sometimes in using erroneous terminology or not using the right terminology could really, fracture someone's life. So I oftentimes encourage faith-based leaders to, yes, the Bible is your foundation, your spirituality is certainly your foundation, but you also need education. That is first and foremost. And as a faith-based leader, if you're not a mental health practitioner, no worries. Then you need to connect yourself with those mental health professionals to bring them into your ministry to talk to your people about mental health. The reason why, as I talk to a lot of, which by the way, I have a lot of faith-based ministers who are my clients,
Right.
okay, pastors, bishops, and such. However, I think that a lot of them are embracing mental health, the mental health practice, because they are starting to realize that yes, prayer is good, yes, the Bible is good, but they're realizing that they're not really getting to the root of a lot of people's problems, okay? Because when we talk about the soul, that encompasses our mind, okay? So when people talk about embracing salvation, okay, your mind still needs to be worked on though, okay? And that's a process. And so there are a lot of faith-based leaders who are seeing that. They're starting to understand, hey, I can't help all my people with some of the problems that I'm hearing from them. And so I do need to embrace having more therapists come into my church. I need to connect with mental health practitioners. I need to connect and collaborate with those. I actually have worked with some pastors where they started putting a mental health ministry within the core of their church, which I do advocate for, where they have therapists in their church for their people. I think that that's absolutely wonderful. Yeah. But when we talk about the African diaspora, the reason why I advocate strongly for the faith-based community to really get on board when it comes to mental health is because for a great number of African Americans, when we experience problems, the church, your pastor, your faith-based leader is going to be one of the primary people that you're going to go to. Right. It's a long-standing tradition with us, okay? And if that person or leader is not properly educated, or if they are not open and flexible enough to embrace a mental health professional to come and speak with their people, then I believe that they do their people a disservice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would agree. I've come across some pastors and bishops who have in their church have, they're becoming more progressive and allowing therapists on staff, if you will, as well. And I think that's a good advancement that they're making. So yeah, I just want to get your, because I know you're a Christian therapist and you do that, you have that practice. I just kind of want to get your thoughts on that and what you've seen and what has possibly changed. So you guys that are on here, I do appreciate you coming in. This is our second segment of Be Well Mental Health sessions that we are doing for the month of October. And I do encourage you to tag people directly into the live stream. You can also share to your own platforms if you would not mind. We're asking you to do that. And then, of course, once you hit the thumbs up, the heart, the care button, you're actually pushing this stream out so that others will be able to watch it as well. And you are more than welcome to make your comments. And if you have any questions for us on tonight, you can engage with us on this evening. This list of panelists that I have there, they're giving us a great insight on tonight. Now, Dr. Stevens, this next one, I had already started reading about cultural norms. And your question, how do cultural norms and traditions in some Black communities influence attitudes toward discussing and addressing mental health issues? So when you reference cultural norms and traditions, did you have certain ones in mind, or are you just kind of like talking in general there?
Well, no, I didn't have any certain ones in mind, and I certainly would love to hear from the panelists, because I'm sure that each of us, just from childhood, has something that they could probably relate to when it comes to cultural norms and people's perspectives and thoughts about mental health. I would say I'm a 60s child, so growing up, I was, I grew up in a time where, if you had that uncle that we now know may be a person who was diagnosed with schizophrenia, right, or has bipolar disorder, it wasn't called that then. No, we just knew that there was an uncle and we said he was off. Yes, that's what we said. And we said, okay, well, Uncle so-and-so, we know he's a little, in another term they would use, okay, he's thrown off. And what we would do with that particular person in our family is try to keep them as hidden as possible and not talk about him and not talk about anybody in our family that we considered to be off or not mentally stable. And so that kind of ideology and thinking as it's passed down through the generations, does affect the minds of how people see or embrace mental health. So
Yeah.
that's just some of my experience, but I'm curious to know, like, what all have you all seen growing up in your particular environment that you grew up in, as a child or as a teenager,
Culturally,
that
I
was considered a cultural norm,
culturally,
you believe affects the way some African Americans feel about today?
I believe that we've been taught to keep it together no matter what. I
Mhm.
grew up with 5 brothers,
Mm.
2 older sisters, and I'm the youngest. And I was told and taught not to cry, as if I
Wow.
was one of the guys, but I was taught not to cry. Don't cry about anything. You're not supposed to cry. Especially as an African American woman, we've been labeled strong for so long that we started believing our strength meant we couldn't be soft or tired or vulnerable. And it stuck with me. It stuck with me because to this day, I still believe sometimes that I can't be soft, I can't be tired, and I definitely can't be vulnerable because it takes me right back to them telling me that you can't be soft, you can't be tired, you got to be strong, and you can't cry. And I have a brother visiting now, and he just was saying that today, and I'm looking at him like, "Dad, you still there?"
Wow.
But strength doesn't mean silence. It means being real enough to say, I'm not okay right now.
Yeah.
I'm not okay right now, and it's not okay to stay that way. Healing requires honesty, and
Mm.
honesty takes courage. Sometimes the bravest thing that we can do is to take that mask off and admit that we need a moment to breathe. And I've been doing a lot of breathing lately.
Good.
It feels good. It
Good.
feels really good to be able to
Kudos,
breathe.
kudos, Black. Kudos, Black.
So I'm breathing. I took the oxygen mask off, and that air feels good. It
Good.
feels good to be able to
Kudos.
use my own. So I'm going to keep it going. So the next time they tell me that I'm not supposed to cry, I'm going to go boo-hoo. I cry because that's a part of who I am.
That's right.
I'm a female. I'm not the one that you can play football with anymore. It hurts in certain areas. So I just
Okay.
let them know that I'm different now.
Yeah.
Time has moved on for me. If you're still stuck there, I would like for you to come along, but I'm not going to have you pull me back.
Yeah.
I
Not at
love
all.
it.
Love that statement at the end, Black. I'm not gonna have you hold me back.
Oh, I love that. I love that so much. I'm gonna give you the applause.
Yeah.
Me too. Me too. Me too. Wonderful, Black. Wonderful.
One
That
of
was
the things that I see is that oftentimes, even I would be curious, Dr. Stevens, about the fortunate people that come to see you, but oftentimes we really don't take the step towards mental health unless something has happened. Something is crashing or transforming. A divorce, something severe. The courts, sending you in, or something like that. At least that's what I saw culturally growing up. That by the time you made it to a mental health profession, you almost didn't have. That was like your last. Yeah, you were on your last leg at that point. Versus, I grew up in a really European environment,
okay.
city, and I watched other children go to see a therapist as a part of their just regular mental and emotional hygiene. They just it was just a part of what they did. It didn't have to be something off the Richter scales. It was just management, the way that they regularly manage themselves. So I would love to be able to see us as a culture embrace our mental and emotional self from a, just managing from day to day, like Coach Gary was saying, coming up with a plan and things of that nature before, the world is about to tip off of its axis.
Absolutely.
That is the, I mean, what you just said, Yolanda, I mean, that is the ultimate goal, is to encourage people to, just like we talk about exercise, Coach Gary and I were talking about exercise, implementing that into your lifestyle as a part of your management of who you are, your holistic being. Mental health should be on that list as a part of maintaining the who you are, not when you get in trouble, but for maintenance. But I do understand that the socioeconomic barrier or crisis or what have you may be a barrier for a lot of our people in terms of, well, can I afford it? And so a part of the solution that we want to begin to work on, I know with Kindred Healing Center, Yolanda and I have talked about this a great deal, is making those kinds of services affordable. And I've had many, many women who have come to me and said, well, I'd like to have services. And again, I don't know who said it. I don't think it's that we don't want it. I think it's just some of the barriers, whether they're internal or whether they're passed down, ideologies that we have that causes us not to go and get the help that we need. But I do know that financially, there are some people, especially now, that they don't have the kind of insurance that allots for those kinds of services. And so here again, we are challenged as a community, right, to think of creative ways, like at the Kindred Healing Center. But we are each challenged we have the challenge now to say, what is it that I can do to bring wellness to the community, understanding what some of the barriers for my people look like. How can I make these services affordable? That is now our challenge, that we have to think about what are those ways and what are those kinds of systems, what do they need to look like to make these kinds of services affordable. And I love what it is that we're doing here collectively, which is why I wanted to do it. And blessings to you, Annette, for saying, yeah, come on, girl. Let's
yeah, Annette. Yes, Annette.
Thank you, Annette.
Wonderful, Annette.
She said, girl, mental health is my thing. So and I love the fact that she said it's her thing. And I thought it was very important that there becomes more conversations, not to necessarily focus on the problems, but as a collective, we each start talking about what can we do as a community from our different perspectives, of how we can bring some solutions for our people. What can we do to combat and get some solutions? Because there are many people out there. There may be some listening tonight or will watch the replay that would say, I'd love to have services. I just can't afford it. Or I can't get to it. Or I would like to have more services, but I want a practitioner that looks like me. So they want somebody, so they want more culturally connectivity, And so I think those are things that we can certainly, as community advocates, as change agents, we can now come up with these ways. One thing about crises helps you get creative. So what are the things that we can do to get creative, to not necessarily talk about the problems, but to bring solutions? And I think in knowing each and every one of us, I know that these are things that we want to be able to do. And I understand, because we want to be paid for the services that we render, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Right.
But we also, we're community focused, which is why I specifically chose all of you all. You all are people that are community focused. And so what are ways that we can provide some of the services that we render to our people to bring a level of affordability and accessibility?
With the lack of access, even when people want to get help, access becomes a whole other challenge. Therapy costs a lot of money. Insurance doesn't always cover it. And sometimes when you're in jobs like what's happening with Hopkins and United Healthcare, they just split. They don't even want to deal with it. So what happened to all the people who had United Healthcare and was going to Johns Hopkins? What happened to that? And finding someone who looks like you said, Dr. Carolyn, or understands your background. We have some that, like with the situation with Serena Williams, when she was pregnant, they didn't even understand her background. When I go to a doctor, you have to be over 60 years old to see me, because you know the old body. Somebody young is not going to know this.
That's true.
You may have been around it. You may have heard things. But I want somebody that knows what this dimple on this part of the body may mean. You know it's setting in for some reason, not because I was standing out in the sun, which is what you may believe, because that's what's happening to your body. That can feel impossible. And if you're working through jobs, caring for your kids or your parents, or just trying to survive, when exactly are you supposed to fit in therapy? That's why I believe that we have to keep pushing for affordable care, virtual options, and community-based healing processes and spaces. Everyone deserves access to healing, no matter where they are in their journey, no matter what they have in their pocket. They should not just choose those who can afford it, because that's what seems to be happening. They're choosing those who can afford it, and they're making it worse on those who thought they could afford it at one time. I'll mention it. I have United Healthcare. I'm having a problem. Now I got to find another doctor. The doctor that I may want is out of network, so that's going to come out of pocket. Problem. So it's a lack of access all the way around.
And that's a conversation. I would love our next conversation to be around access, because there is.
You was in my head, Yolanda.
There's something happening with healthcare. Like Saunders is a Georgia-based healthcare. It just crashed. It just shut down.
Yes, it did.
It's on purpose, guys.
So
it was on purpose.
There's a conversation to be had around healthcare and how we come back in a communal way and collectively take care of our community.
Right.
Absolutely.
I totally agree too. I want to say, as a self-investment strategist, at least in the area of those that are dealing with depression, you're dealing with anxiety. When it comes to the mind, which is a mental area, and Dr. Stevens brought out how that's soulish. That's our soul. We're a triune being. We're more than just a body. We're more than a mind. We're also a spirit. So in the area of the spiritual realm, in the area of your emotional realm, I want to tell you that I have a way to offer you something that is as free as, can you make a phone call? I have several avenues for people who right now want to say, I need some help. I need somebody to talk to. I need to be in a safe space. And I need to have people who, after I say what I say, aren't judgmental. Right. And I want to know, can they support me? And I can tell you that, yes, in a spiritual way, in an emotional way, there are people that I can connect you with that will help you on a daily basis. When it comes to therapy, I love how it's brought out evidently and very plain. It costs dollars. When it comes to your spirit and you want to have somebody that you can go to talk, I've got this issue, I need some help. Prayer does work. Again, God is not an idiot. God is not somebody that you ask and then he say, now what can you do? And I'll see how much I can chip in. No, it's God that carries us when we can't carry ourselves. And it's evident in the sunrise. Nobody is going to get that sun up in the morning. Zero people, no matter their nation, whether their race, their political power. Nobody is going to put
Yeah.
the sun up tomorrow, and nobody is going to keep breath in your body. Man, if we had that person and they were a human, we'd all be dead for one. Nobody. And just those two facts alone, I'm telling you, you get in touch with me. I have a set investment strategy for you that I can connect you just with a simple phone call. If it's a matter, listen, if it's a matter now that you just need to be able to talk and be in a safe environment and have people who will have compassion and will pray and intercede for you, I am a witness with evidence. I have went through a traumatic situation that some on this panel are aware of. And there's no way in the world I could sit here right now with this composure.
Mm.
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
Absolutely not. There's no way that I could sit here and talk or even look this normal. It's been traumatic.
Mm.
But
Yeah.
I have a phone number. Listen, just the phone number that I call. And this atmosphere that I go into has brought me here to where I can be on this panel with you all this evening. And I want to give shout out to the ones that are on the line. I want to give a shout out to Rachel. I want to say that when it comes to being able to help you in the area of what do you need to do as it relates to how am I going to make it to get money? How am I going to set up a business? How am I going to get my mind together to even believe that I've got talent in me? I got to give you a shout out, Rachel. I encourage each of you that are going through this area with your finances, with your business, maybe it's collapsing, whatever that is. It's right here. It's on the line. I can only talk about the ones I know because I don't know everybody else's business. I've just been with Rachel a short while. And even though I've suffered this emotional battle, I've suffered moving into another dimension of how to make it on a day-to-day, it's because God hears me and I hear him. God hears you. God hears you.
Beautiful.
Stay with this segment. The next session that we're on. Stay with us each Wednesday in this month. Come with an open mind to say, you know what? I'm here and I know that I'm going to hear just what I need. And you're going to get it. You're going to get it.
Beautiful.
You know, we always found ways to cope.
Yeah.
Through prayer. Some people use music. Some people have humor. And they're just pushing through. Those things got us here. And I honor that and I respect that for anybody that uses or chooses anything like that. But what helped us survive isn't always what helps us heal. A lot of us are still operating in survival mode, staying busy, staying numb, staying strong. But healing requires rest. You really have to take that up. It requires rest. It requires it requires learning new ways to cope, ways that don't just help us make it through the day, but help us actually live again. And I've spoken to Dr. C, and we may have just said it in talking, but we say it all the time that we want to live. We want to live. And that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to start living again because I honestly haven't seen life in a while. You know, one of my children, she's turning 18, and she says, "Boy, that went quick." I had to laugh at her. I said, "You think 18 came quick? When you get to those 30s and 40s, I don't even remember my 40s. It went by so daggone fast.
Right.
50s go even faster." So I said, "Yeah, okay, relish in it right now because I'm going to say what my mother always said. You're a child for such a short period of time, but you're an adult for the rest of your life."
That's right.
Minute January 3rd come, I'm going to let her know you're an adult for the rest of your life.
Right.
On January 3rd.
I'm looking forward to her turning 18 more than she is.
Said January 3rd.
Up early that morning.
That's funny.
I'm looking at the birth certificate. I'm looking at the hour she was born, and I'm gonna hit it real quick. Sweetie, you're an adult right now. I'm not missing a moment or a second. You are grown.
That is hilarious.
Capricorn, so she
Hey,
gonna
wait.
have
Hey, Black Baby wanted to be grown all this time, but now the day of her being grown, she ain't gonna want it.
She's gonna get the
That's a
last gift
whole
that I
other
give to
segment
each and
on
every one
itself.
of
It is.
They all
Mental
get
health
that
and
same gift.
mental
I'm gonna
health and
skip it
parenting
one
grown
gift.
children.
Right.
I give my children
Yeah, mental
this
health
gift.
and parenting grown children. That should
Right,
be
and it becomes
that
a
should be a
problem.
segment. Yeah, that,
So I
that-
give
that-
them this. I give
Hey,
them
Dr.
this,
C, what's the name of the show that you gonna have, Dr. C? Tell them about that show. And then we gotta let the net go.
Annette is wonderful. I'm
What's
telling
that? Listen, so I think Yolanda and I we were there without knowing we were there. I think I want to talk about affordability because Dr. Stevens had touched on it and Yolanda talked about it. Maybe we can kind of focus on that for the next session. And then Dr. Stevens, you just mentioned about another, what was that?
Well, what I was going to say was what we represent here in these 6 squares, right? Is that everybody has a different modality that they provide the people that they come in contact with, a level of care for the areas that they are in. And so I'd like for us to maybe talk about affordability, accessibility, and integrated healthcare, if you will, because I'm a firm believer in integrated care because I believe that it takes more than it takes a village. Using that term again, it takes a village. I practice that with my own practice. If I have a client and they're coming to me for one thing, but for example, I call her Black, everybody, but Black Diamond, let me be professional and say Black Diamond, because when we're talking, I say Black, but Black. So Black Diamond is a trauma-informed parent coach, right? And so I may have a client that's seeing me for one thing, but I'll say, well, I need to connect you to see a person like Black Diamond. I've had clients who come to me, professional women who come to me and say, hey, where could I get holistic care? And I'm always going to say, well, the Kindred Healing Center. So I believe that in order to really help a person holistically, that as a community, we need to come together, find out what types of services or things that we offer people, and be able to connect the dots, so to speak, to say, okay, well, and what is it that you offer the community? Well, Bobby, what is it that you offer? So on and so on, and to be able to connect those dots so that people can have a well-rounded, journey, as opposed to they go to the doctor and they just get, well, that's a whole nother story. But if they go to the doctor, the journey is not going to be as pleasant. And I believe that collectively, those are things that we can create and come up with. So beautiful. I'd certainly like to see us touch on that when we talk about affordability, accessibility. What are creative ways that we can now be able to offer our community the services that they need? And again, you all hear me talk about Kindred Healing Center a lot, because in her and Yolanda, you really should put your I'm not savvy enough, girl. I was trying to tap it into the chat, but I couldn't. But at the Kindred Healing, I really was. I'm telling on myself. But at the Kindred Healing Center, it's a good representation of integrated care, because as you walk the halls and go into different rooms, there's the chiropractor. She has different kinds of practitioners in the one building. Only person she ain't got in that building yet is Dr. Carolyn, but we working on it. we working on it though. But she has different kinds of practitioners in the building. So when a person comes in that one building, they can they can go where they choose, but they can experience. It's a one-stop shop because you can go there and drink tea and get yoga. So you get to experience the different things that you need at that particular time. And I think that talk about how we can be creative and develop things, a system like that, Annette, amongst ourselves.
Yes.
Then we're able to link people, like Bobby mentioned. She has somebody that she could link people with. If it's spiritual care that you need, if it's trauma-informed care that you need, if it's holistic. So I think if we can talk about what creative ways or what are some creative things that we can do to spark other people that are watching to begin to develop that in your community. We're just 6 group of people, but we want to encourage people, start something like that in your community, or get in touch with Yolanda and say, hey, I live here. How could I have a Kindred Healing Center here? Or get in touch with Black and say, hey, how what could I do to socially, or when it comes to trauma-informed care, or get in touch with Bobby, get in touch with Annette to talk about what can I do in my church or what have you. So I'm very big on the interconnecting. We do need each other. So I think that would be really cool. And that if we talked about some creative ways that we can focus on, addressing some of the challenges, the barriers, and things like that. So I like that, talking about affordability, accessibility, and those kinds of things.
Good. And then we can come up with possibly a list of resources that we can share with everyone. And that's pretty much what you were saying. So we will focus on that for the next segment. And this is just great. And Bobby, you told people they're going to get help when they listen to these sessions. And I totally agree. I believe God is constructing this in that way. So we will focus on that on next week. Ladies, I thank you again for your time on this week and coming in, as Bobby said, with open minds so we can get the help we need on tonight and during these segments. So we'll be back on next Wednesday evening, 6 p.m. Central Standard Time. And many are on different time zones, but it will be 6 p.m. Central Standard. So we'll see you then. And you guys enjoy the rest of your evening. Thank you guys for listening, watching YouTube, Facebook, Instagram. We appreciate each and every one of you. And if you guys have any questions for us on next week, any comments, something that you want to see us address, we are throw it in the comment section. We are more than willing to see if we can try and touch on that as well. But until next week, just get prepared, and I believe God is helping us, in all areas. So we just get prepared to receive what he has for us. Until next time, you guys can get caught in a net.
Get caught in a net with